is that we have very disgruntled employees. We have very disgruntled team members. They start not being able to work together very well, and that starts to cause a lot of issues in teams. And what may have taken you months and years to be able to create an amazing culture then starts to get really questioned in terms of how these people are going to be resolved it. And as leaders, and when we're all adults in businesses, unless you're dealing with teenagers in your businesses, one of the things that happens is we go, well, we're all adults. People should be able to solve their own conflicts. But the realness, then the reality of that is that people often are not able to solve their own conflicts, and they actually need some resolution. Now, one of the most common questions I get is, look, is conflict management really my issue as a leader and a business owner? And the answer is yes. In fact, I believe that it's one of the essential skills in being able to attract really great people in your business, as well as to be able to retain really great people in your business. And it's often sometimes not the most productive people, the best people that you have in your businesses that are creating the conflict. Often it's our low performers and people that are not great at their productivity, not great at producing their work, that often cause the conflict. And in more cases than not, with people that are highly productive as well. So it's an essential skill as owners of businesses to be able to learn how to be able to resolve conflict. And it's not an easy task. Even though I'm going to give you some tips, it's not an easy task, but trust me, it does something that you get better at, and you need to upskill if you don't have those skills. Please ask me some questions on these lives, pop them in and I'll answer them as soon as I go, or always just reach out to me. My business is called Ask Shivani. Reach out and let me share with you some other tips and podcasts and blogs and other resources that we have that actually be able to help you in terms of what you're trying to achieve. And so the first thing I want to talk about is there are three tips that I want to share today. The first one that I want to talk about is how to separate the person from the problem. Now, you may have heard that, but I want to talk about what that means on a practical level. So let me take an example as a mum. Say, for example, one of my kids is misbehaving. One of the sayings that we have in our house is, look, your behavior is not okay. Rather than you're not okay, you're stupid, you're this, then we are not separating the person from the problem. But the behavior is the issue, not the person. So one of the things I often say to my kids is, look, your behavior is not okay. There's behavior in terms of how you're doing that, but that is separate to the problem, like the person, which is you are very much loved, you're amazing, but this particular behavior is not okay, and addressing that. So what does that look like when it comes to our teams? What does that look like when it comes to our workplaces? So say, for example, the conflict is within two of the people that you have in your team. You want both of them to be able to get along. They have to work together on particular tasks, particular projects, perhaps in your workplace. And they're having a conflict. They've either stopped perhaps communicating with each other, perhaps they've started to guard some of the information that they've got that they really need to share. Perhaps they're gossiping or complaining about that particular person, and other team members get involved in their teams, the broader team, and that is one way that it starts to really destroy the culture and all the stuff that you've built as a leader in your business. So how do you separate the person from the problem? Well, I find for me, my ego kicks in and my ego goes, well, how dare they? Like, they've got such a great job, they've got great money, they've got great environment. Why do they do that? People do that. So separating the person from the problem, it may look like, again, using what I shared as a mum, you would always, have that conversation with the person, really hone in on that particular behavior that you're not happy with. So for example, I've had two leaders in my businesses that haven't been getting along. The behavior there was that they stopped including others in terms of sharing some staff that they needed to be able to do. Because we were really short staffed, which is a really common issue that we've got in our businesses these days, and that global shortage will continue. And they started to get a little bit protective of each of their own patches. So I got really upset about this. I knew that I needed to have a conversation with both of them, and I knew that it was better to actually have the conversation with them individually before having a conversation with them together. And so in the individual conversation went along the lines of focusing on the behavior, not the person. Look, you're an amazing employee, but this particular behavior of you being guarded about your team and not being able to share resources is not great. Now, I know you're worried about missing out. I know you're worried about not being able to meet your KPIs, but we are one business and we need to be able to share our resources on certain critical resources. And so I really need you to shift that behavior and become a bit more abundant and become a bit more open and think beyond just your team and its KPIs. Think about the business as a whole. I then repeated that conversation with the other person and then brought the two of them in together to have that conversation around it. So I just wanted to share that it's so important when you're learning to deal with conflict or you're having to deal with conflict to really separate the person from the person and the problem from the person and really focus on the problem. And in my experience, often it's behavior related or something that you want them to shift around that. The second thing that I wanted to talk about in this live is the fact that it's really important making sure that when we have conflict and we need to resolve it, that it's timely. You know, often if you go back to somebody 2 weeks, 3 weeks later and you say, hey, this conflict particularly happened, and then they're, you know, like, I have no recollection of the details of it. So my experience is if there is a conflict happening and you become aware of that, you want to really get to that in the next 24 to 48 hours, 1 to 2 days. And you want to be able to, again, work out what your strategy is going to be, take a breath and work out how you aim to resolve that. And so leaving feedback, leaving conflict there for a while can actually blow up. It can fester, it can start to cause all sorts of issues. I have worked with clients where they've had resignations as a result of that, really, and often it's the highly productive people, the people that are doing amazing things that often leave because that conflict is not being addressed as from a leader and an owner. And so it's really important to make sure that it's timely, and it's also really important to make sure that it's detailed. Because sometimes what happens is that we, you know, tell people, particularly when it's good feedback, hey, great day, you know, great this. Well, that's too broad, and we need to get very detailed about it. When it comes to conflict, we want to get very specific. We don't want to use hearsay of what happened or you've heard it third hand. You wanted to be able to get to the source. So we cut some of the gossiping issues out. And what we want to do is make sure that it's detailed enough so that it's not broad brush, so people can go, no, I didn't do that, or yes, I did do that, and here are my reasons. And you talked through that in terms of what you need to create. The third is this desire to resolve. And one of the questions that I ask people is, do you actually have a desire to get this resolved? Well, not really, because I don't really like that person. But can you understand how important it is that that conflict is resolved? Because it's actually beyond you. It's also in the team. It's also in the team culture. It's in what we're trying to achieve in our business. So always asking for what their buy-in is to resolve it. And after I've spoken to them about that, I also want to then get a rating. I usually try and get a rating out of 10. So look, out of 10, where are you sitting in terms of you think you can resolve that? Yeah, I think I'm sitting at a 7. I've still got a couple of hesitancies. Do you want to talk about that hesitancy? And let's get you up to 8 or 9. Or no, I've got a clear action path. I'm sitting at an 8 and I can do that. I also often then take notes as an owner, or whether you've got your HR people involved. So you've got a bit of a record of that conflict, because if it arises, you have some history. And, you know, in some teams, it's often the same 2 people or the same two teams that are clashing. Perhaps is vying for resources, whether it's money or people, and you want to actually have a little bit of that record of it. So 3 things that you want to do with the conflict. It is absolutely your role as a business owner to be able to learn how to resolve conflict, just remembering that the number one reason people leave businesses is not money, despite what they tell you. It is their key relationship with their leaders and their manager. And so if you're the business owner, you want to make sure you learn and upskill yourself to be able to do that. Please shout out if you've got any questions. Learning to separate the problem from the person is really important, and making sure that the conflict is resolved in a very timely manner, but also very detailed. So timely, 1 to 2 days, 24 to 48 hours. And you then want to be able to make sure that you've got that recorded. Ask people in terms of how committed they are to being able to resolve it, and even get them a rating rather than a subjective number. Give them a rating out of 10, like where are you sitting? And if they're sitting at 3 or 4, then have a deeper conversation with them in terms of what needs to happen. I'm running a webinar on how to get your people to step up tomorrow at 11 a.m. Brisbane time, Australia, 12 p.m. Sydney time. It is absolutely free for you to come and attend, and I will pop the registration link at the bottom of it. If you or your people, or if anybody that you know that deals a lot with people and would like to learn how to get your people to step up and I'll be covering how to bring the right people and find the right people, how to retain the really good one, and how to get more productivity out of the people that you have. Thanks for joining me. Any questions, please ask, and I look forward to being able to catch up with you at the webinar tomorrow and being able to help you step up, scale up, and grow your businesses. Thanks for tuning in.